right, so we will be presenting on our experience incorporating a 3D printer into the Booth and Dimmick Library in Coventry, Connecticut. And
really what we're focusing on is we've done this and why did it matter? What has benefit been to us? So first of all, I'm sure I can make this work. I'm Kristi Sadowski. I'm the co-director and head of team services at the Booth and Dimmick Memorial Library, and I have been 3D printing since about February. So very limited experience, but it's been a crash course and it's just been fantastic.
And I am Carney. I am the library assistant for technology and 3D printing at the Booth and Dimmick Library. I'm also an assistant librarian at the Wilbraham and Monson Academy up in Wilbraham, Massachusetts. So libraries are my life right now. And I've been my experience with 3D printing is about as much as Kristi. So since probably about February, an immediate crash course in not only learning to hook up a device that I have never worked with before, but also, learning to fix it, learning to use it, and going from there.
So that's who we are, and now we just kind of want to get an idea of who you were, because we've never been to CEN before, and we weren't really sure what our audience was going to be. So how many of you know what a maker is? Awesome. And how many of you would consider yourselves a maker? I bet that's not true. I bet it's more. And who here has used a 3D printer?
Kind of.
And how many of you are librarians?
Okay.
Okay, great. Because that was the other question. Like, who's even been in a library?
Yeah.
So going back to who is a maker, very few of you thought you were a maker, but a lot of you knew what it was. So our definition of a maker is really anyone who makes anything, anyone who does anything. We've got the traditional, or not the traditional, but I guess the stereotype definition of it, which is the builders and the engineers and people who are doing 3D printing and who go on those communities and make all those awesome techie crafts that are beyond what we think is possible. But it's also innovators. It's anyone who thinks up an idea and brings it to fruition. It's the knitters, the quilters, the crafters, I guess someone say that's the old-fashioned sense of the word. Authors and illustrators are makers. We deal with them every day. Artists, musicians, and even bakers and chefs. As long as you come up with a product and something that you make and do yourself, you're a maker. So what creates a makerspace? There's a lot of versions of that, but I really wound up liking this definition. A collection of tools does not define a makerspace, but rather we define it by what it enables, making. It doesn't matter what you have in there, as long as you're providing a space for the mentality in your communities to foster what I'm calling maker movement, then you've got a makerspace. You don't just need a 3D printer, although that's what we're here to talk about. So makerspaces and libraries. I'm guessing if you're here, you're excited about the idea. I know we've heard a lot of myths about it, that it's going to be too loud. It's loud, but it brings people over, and they get excited about it when they see it. It took up a little space. It took up a table, but we were able to fit it in. But we really think that it's a connection that's meant to be. Throughout the fall, I went to several workshops to hear about it. A lot of them were done by the Westport Library. I heard Bill Derry speak, and he said something that really made a lot of sense to me. And I, of course, don't remember exactly, but this is a paraphrase, that a library is a place with resources for self-directed learning and exploration, and a makerspace is a place with resources for self-directed learning and exploration. It's the same thing. We want people to come in, realize their potential, use our resources, and do something with them. So that's why we're so excited.
So 3D printing within the context of public library, why not? We in a public library, we kind of find ourselves in a unique position to provide access to new and innovative technologies, to really kind of be that unbiased community center of information that really kind of works with anybody in the community. We're not tailored specifically to working with one facet of our given community. And each library really is kind of, not to use unique position again, but any unique position, really to kind of tailor their services for their community. So what works for Coventry might not work for Enfield, might not work for Windsor, but each institution is flexible enough to meet its community's needs. And again, we're uniquely positioned to serve our community. And exposure. So exposure to new technologies, exposure to, in our case, 3D printing, exposure to creation software online that really outside of a school or outside of like any higher education institution, individuals and students and teenagers might not necessarily be exposed to. And it's not a scary thing, although coming into it, it was definitely a little daunting. And really, kind of within our experience, we've kind of decided that really all you need is a willingness to learn. Neither of us really knew anything about 3D printing or creative software online. My background is history and Japanese language and literature, and Kristi is
history, theater studies, and teen services. So.
But through the wonder that is Google, as a librarian, sad to say that, but and really just the internet in general. There's a wealth of information online, and it's just it's maybe not easy to find what you need, but everything's there, and just with a concentrated search you can find it. So you just need the willingness to learn, excitement to try new things. Enthusiasm is a heck of a drug. And it's excitement, it's enthusiasm, it's wow, this is awesome, this is really cool, and I've never used this before. And failing does not equal failure. Really, this object right here took us about 20 or 25 prints to make. This is just a simple little calibration device.
It was our first print, which is really why it's exciting, although by the end.
Frustrating, but we learned a number of valuable lessons, and the idea is to use this, that's a nickel in the middle, and it is to kind of make sure that the source code in the program that we have online, when it prints, is true to the dimensions that you imagined for the piece to be online. So you were able to kind of create the dimensions for a nickel online and then print it out, and if it looks like that, then your printer is, working. It took us a long time to do that. But again,
but now that's done, and we can go on and print other things, and we don't have to do that every time, and we know that it's roughly true to size. So the way we wound up involved in this movement is, like I said, I have been getting excited about it and hearing things here and there and going to presentations, but I wasn't sure how to implement it. And then I dragged a couple of members of the board to the ACLB conference on October 25th, and there was a presentation there about it. And they got excited, and they left it, and they said, we're going to make this happen. And the president of our board, we're an association library, so it works that way, but she did a special use book sale just for that. The book sale began on November 20th, and by December 12th, the article hit the paper that said we had enough money to purchase our 3D printer. It was really fast, and it was fantastic because of the level of excitement it generated in the community. One of the things that really helped us was another member of our board's son is really into this stuff, and he actually has a 3D printer of his own. So he came in during the fundraiser, and he showed it to us, and these are some pictures. That's him right there, and then he is 15 years old, and he teaches us how to do this, and fixes it and everything. So this was the article, and what it really did was people came in, they were just in the library and they saw him and all his projects and the printing, and they started asking questions, and he kept an audience enthralled for 2 hours. And an ever-changing audience too, coming in and out, but some people were the same. And they were really excited, and they weren't necessarily buying books, but they were sticking money in the jar as they left. And it may be hard to try and find someone like that, but there's a Magnet Academy here in Hartford. I think it's the science and engineering or aerospace one he goes to. There's a lot of kids there. There might be one from your community too, who they all have to do community service projects, and it's a good way to find someone who can help you out and even just come in and show the community so they can get excited about maybe taking the next step.
And around the same time, I had been looking, kind of for a second job, and it was about that time that I saw a posting at the Booth Endemic Library for a library assistant who was interested in kind of learning how to use a 3D printer, learning how to work and learning how to kind of develop it into library programming and really kind of make it fit within the community. And really, outside of school or outside of university, for me, there was going to be no opportunity for me to learn how to or get this much like hands-on work in working with a 3D printer. So the timing worked out marvelously on that. And now most of my time at the library is spent working with the printer, working with adults, but especially members of the young adult YA community who are really interested in, it's a focal point of kind of like that section of the library. There's always a constant stream of patrons and young adults that are walking by that are like, oh, what are you printing today, Chris? Or like, oh, how's it going?
This is the printer we finally decided on. It was, again, from a little bit of a recommendation from Evan, but some other research. You're going to talk about it, but what I'm going to say with the decision-making is we picked this one because for the price, it offers a lot of stability and the opportunity to tweak it and really learn about the machine itself without having to do it every single time. So the one Evan has, which was a little bit cheaper, he says that sometimes it takes him a couple hours to get a print going. This one, a couple seconds. It's pretty reliable, so we're very happy with it.
So, as you can see, this is the PrintBot Plus, and PrinterBot is really kind of a neat company in that they manufacture the printer, but there is a huge amount of online support for it as well, both from the company that makes it as well as from other individuals and other organizations that use this printer. It looks simple. It's got like birchwood on the outside, so the construction is relatively easy, which helps keep the cost down. As well as it's really very easy to maintain. I spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of my shift just kind of making sure that the printer is still within calibration. So it really...
Because I usually break it, but then he comes in.
It really, it was a bit of a learning curve learning how to work with it, but luckily we had our Evan, right, who, lives and breathes 3D printing. So, it was really amazing working with somebody who is so enthusiastic about this, and especially at such a young age where, this is going to be, incorporated in everything he does from now on. And this is our little makerspace as we have it in the library. So we've done a few tweaks to the printer itself, just kind of through trial and error. And the way the desk you see kind of set up, if you see over in the second picture to the right, that window leads to her office. And then on the opposite side of that, you have the adult computer banks. And then off to the left of that desk is going to be the young adult computer bank. So it really is kind of right in one of the main transit areas for the library. And there's a lot of traffic between adults using the computers, especially kind of our young adult regulars that are always in the library, always coming in. They're always looking at the printer. Whenever there's a print job going, there's always kind of a crowd growing around it, just trying to see it. Especially with some of the older population that comes in. A lot of them worked for local defense contractors and reminisced about doing similar projects in the 70s and 80s, albeit not necessarily plastic. But just like talking about working on something similar, and they wanted their grandkids to see it, or they wanted their kids to see it, because it's a way for them to connect with a younger population, and it's a way for us to be able to connect not only with the younger population, but with an older population that uses the library regularly as well. And this is the printing software we're using. So this is Repeater Host. This allows us to take an object and slice it into layers. So, well, maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but this is the program that runs the printer. So once the printer is plugged in and turned on, everything else we do is through this program here. So it allows us to augment the shape of the object we're printing. We can completely control the printer, the amount of plastic we want it to extrude, the speed we want it to extrude, how hot we want it to actually get. How fast we want the print job to go. We're able to control everything through here. And we have this as used on an iMac, so running through Apple. It doesn't have to be, it's not Apple specific, it's Mac or PC, so we just prefer using Apple. But it's also free. The program is free, it's open source, there are continual updates for it. And the maker community is really cool in that collaboration and sharing is really kind of the cornerstone of the community, really. So it's learning from others, and if we're able to improve it, sharing that improvement so that others are able to then use that. If they can improve it, and then they share it. And just almost kind of like crowdsourcing, but really it's just kind of like together as a community we're able to make the product better in ways that maybe the original creator hadn't thought of. And this is Thingiverse. So this is the website where we're getting all of the objects that we print from. So again, all of the objects we're printing are open source. Everything is free to use. And it's as easy as up in the search bar searching for something like, I think the first print job I did for a child, one of the kids from the children's room was Olaf from Frozen. So I forever have, do you want to build a snowman stuck in my head? But, she loved that snowman. We were able to actually find a print job of Olaf, probably about 2 or 3 inches high. And, that was our first, successful print after making the little calibration nickel device. And it was just really cool to kind of watch her watch the printer and kind of, it's just a way of connecting. It's really cool. And then support, which is a big thing, especially where both of us were kind of coming in knowing, next to nothing about 3D printing. The maker community is huge in that even, outside of the library, there are maker spaces popping up in little areas like outside the library. You've got hacker spaces opening up. The DIY movement is huge, and people learning how to craft something themselves, learning how to make, learning how to fix, really kind of wanting to learn why something works the way it does. And I think our makerspace is definitely a way to kind of hone in on that. Sources of information for me when I ran into a problem have been Reddit. They have a specific subreddit. I don't know if anybody's heard of Reddit. It's an online kind of forum community, and they have subreddits that are dedicated to just about anything you can think of, including cats and hats, but that's another topic. So communities like Reddit, Printerbot, Thingiverse, any issue I've had, I've been able to, for the most part, find an answer online. And issues include plastic jamming up in the extruder, extrusion issues themselves, inconsistent temperature, filament issues, object dimensions not coming out the way they were kind of supposed to. And these are just kind of a few issues. Not to say that it's been an arduous, tiring, frustrating experience, because it kind of has been. But really, we've run into an issue and we've been able to find every answer online.
And just so you get an idea, I'm going to talk about some of the projects that we've done with it, but I would run that printer from when I got there in the morning until at 9 a.m. until about 2 or 3 was when it would say, okay, the motor's too hot, I need a break. And I would do that all week long, and then Chris would come in and I'd be like, it's not working right. And so it was getting constant use for him to actually have all of these problems. So some of what we've done with it, this was really unexpected. I knew we would get there, but I didn't realize it would happen 2 days after we pulled the printer out of the box, where people started coming in and other departments in the town, human services, the schools, and they wanted to do things with it. So we brought in class visits where the teachers just wanted their students to see how it worked and to print something small so they understood the concept and understood that there was this career path and to get them excited to go on about those things. The same really happened with Boy Scouts, but the most exciting one for me was my robot project, and you can see a couple pictures up there of what I'm calling Herbie. I was approached by the Human Services, Youth Services Coordinator for the town, and she, in partnership with the Dean of Students, had a group of 8th graders who they felt were socially at risk, needed to be away from their computers and find a group of people. And so they were surveyed, and I guess they like computers and they liked the idea of building things, and I had just unpacked the printer, so they came over and said, what can we do together? And we really wanted something that would move, something that they could do a whole bunch of different things with, not just printing, but learning about electronics, learning about how to put things together. And so we found the robot. He's sort of a mishmash of things, and this is, again, the beauty of the community. I found this robot, it was the right concept, and I got all excited and I sent it off. I said, this is what we're doing, and then I clicked through on the directions, which maybe I should have done first, and everything was in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, and there's only so much Google Translate could do for me. So I looked around and found some other similar robots and tried to use their wiring and their instructions on how the mechanical aspect of it fit together. And eventually we came up with a product we're really happy with. It was our first attempt, and not going to say that it, just judges distance and goes in a straight line all the time. Sometimes it just spins in circles, but they made that happen. And what was really neat with the kids was they were excited. They kind of came in the first time, and they're like, why are we here? We don't want to be here. Very not quiet, but then they're like, I guess I'll come back. And they just kept coming back. It was a 6-week thing. I don't know if you mentioned that. But what was really interesting to me was they actually knew a little about 3D printing, but they couldn't use a screwdriver. They couldn't do it. It took, putting the pieces together for me took under 5 minutes. For them, it took 2 hours. And that's great because they got frustrated and they struggled and they learned that they could do it themselves. And now they can take that and they can take all the components they have here and go home and they can make something else with it. So that's why I was really, really excited to see what they could do with it. So that's part of what we've done, but Chris has had an entirely different experience.
So another one of my roles at the library is doing one-on-one information and computer literacy sessions. And along with that, I've done one-on-one 3D printing sessions where if like a family wants to come in and either just see how it works or learn how to use the program, or even if an individual wants to come in with an object in mind that they found they want to learn how to print, we'll book out half an hour, sit down with them and kind of go through, this is how you use it, this is how it works, and just kind of sit with them with the print. And something I was not expecting is that I was actually able to kind of build a relationship with a few of the young adults that frequent the library. We have a constant, like a regular group of probably about 9 or 10 that are constantly in the library on afternoons, especially when I'm there. And one of them in particular took a real kind of liking to the printer. He's always been very interested in computer hardware. He'll tear down and put a computer back together blindfolded. Very technically literate, technically savvy. Not really all that great at communicating like me, with members of his own cohort. So any of the students in the library his own age, anybody, really he's just kind of, he's not big on communication, so he's kind of always kept to himself in the library a little bit, with the exception of this printer, to the point where he's interested in trying to work in the library over the summer, learning how to continue using the printer, but also learning how to show others how to use the printer. I mean, he's taken such an interest in it, and it's in the few months that I've been there, it's been like amazing to just see his growth in that he's interested in reaching out. He's interested in working with people that he doesn't even know now on something that he's interested in, 3D printing in the computer. I mean, he took to the program instantly, learned it quicker than me, which I'm finding is going to be common now. But more importantly, he started talking about college. He started talking about what he wants to do after school, what he's doing in school, what interests him. And it's been phenomenal at opening up like a new line of communication and a new dialogue with somebody who's really truly invested in something that we're working on. I find that absolutely amazing to work on this stuff.
So some of the other ideas that we've had and haven't had a chance to really implement that people have talked to us about or we've seen in the news. What else can you do? Some basic ones. Anyone can be interested. Replace a part from your game. It's all online. I had one of the first things I did for someone was make a new chess piece for their set so they could keep playing. One of the kids came to they wanted to make a mummy in a casket for a diorama for school because otherwise they'd be out shopping, spending a ton of money, and taking a bunch of time. Create something and then get to see it in 3 dimensions. You can do that. It's a really neat way to take drawings into reality, and then goes into prototyping. That was one of our buzzwords we were using while fundraising, because really, while we've talked a lot about our experiences with teens and children, this is for everyone, and we want it to be for everyone, and we're getting to that point. So that's one of our big projects.
This is probably like my favorite project, because the PrinterBot, the company, fully endorses this and wants you to go out and print off parts of a new printer. If you search on Thingiverse, the site that we looked at earlier for getting parts and plans, you can find plans to either replicate specific components to their printer, or even just, I think Evan's working on a portable 3D printer right now. He's retrofitting a suitcase and putting a 3D printer within the suitcase, so it's going to be portable. And their only kind of request is that if you're able to improve the design, submit the plans to them so they can look it over and maybe incorporate it into their own plan. So it's really kind of, again, that idea of working independently but together to improve a common project and kind of like towards a common goal.
And this is what you've probably seen in the news. I've seen it on NPR. I've seen it on a bunch of other library blogs. There have been at least 2 instances that I know of where someone has gone into the library, used that 3D printer, and made a prosthesis. simple. It's it's going to take a little bit of time and some reading, but if you're committed, it's much cheaper than doing another one. If it gets damaged, you can switch out a part really easily. You can color code it if that's to your outfits if that's important to you.
And just the material cost for that hand is probably about $5 or so, just in terms of the cost of plastic. A spool of plastic we pay maybe $25 or $30 for. So I mean, the material is just cheap, and I mean it's not going to be the most durable object in the world, obviously, but I mean, especially if it belongs to, like a child, it could break, it could get lost, they could outgrow it. And in terms of just being able to replicate and replace, within our software, we can just actually scale up the design a little. We can edit little, each individual component of that to make a custom-sized object for somebody. So it may take a few hours to do, but at the end result of maybe 2 hours of work and $5 worth of material, I mean something like that is.
So why does it matter? We've talked about a few things. We've talked about its ability, within the community to strengthen it. But what we've really found, community, making connections, making opportunities for the students and adults within the community to really explore who they are and explore their future. A chance, who doesn't want to encourage that? That's really, I think, why we're here. Libraries. It's nice being able to throw around words like STEAM and STEM with our programs. Yeah, we do, it's a library, so the general connotation often is that we're focused on literature, but we're not. We're doing lots of other things. I've seen, Lego clubs in libraries, any kind of techie crafts. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But when we were fundraising, one thing that really popped up was this word a lot from people who were watching what we were doing. And that was really cool to see all of these people who said, I've only ever seen this in science fiction. I never believed it could be a reality. I'm so excited to see it, and I'm so excited that now this is something I can try. It may not be one of the library, give them a chance to try something. It's also been super beneficial for the library itself. People are interested. Funding is coming in because of it. It's not huge yet, but we're seeing the doors open and we're making the connections. Our printer was funded, half of it came from a matching donation from people who were just really excited about it and excited about the possibilities. And publicity, we've been in the newspaper more in the last year than in my rest of my time at the library.
No bad publicity, nobody making bullets. Every time I bring this up at my library's like, oh, did you hear how they can make bullets? I'm like, did you mean more negative? That's right.
They can make bullets, they can make a gun, but there's a permission form that they sign when they start to learn it that says that they're not going to make anything construed as a weapon. And the general sentiment is if we see you doing something like that, one, you're not going to leave with it, but two, we will call someone about it because that's not what it's here for and you agree not to. But more importantly, the kind of plastic and the caliber printer that we have, you're not going to get very far. You're really not. But going back to it, it's bringing sustainability to the library itself, and that's exciting as well. It's opening the new doors. It's making us more community centered, which of course is what we're really shooting for. And everything we're doing, it's making us see the future in our building. So what can you do? You may not be at that point where you can purchase a 3D printer, but there is this handy little thing which is a cross between a 3D printer and a cop glue gun, and you can print in 3 dimensions. This is something I made yesterday. It was my attempt at a bicycle. It had handlebars, but it didn't like being in my bag. And it's hard to use, but I've seen people sit there and try it. When they make something, it's really exciting. And again, there's a huge community for this. I believe there's an exhibit at MoMA right now with things that are made exclusively from this, and it runs a little bit more than $100. So it's a much cheaper and way of getting 3D printing in to get that start. Other things you can do is foster that maker mentality. Continue with your Lego clubs, your knitting clubs, any kind of techie crafts, even regular crafts. That's part of being a maker too. And one thing that I really want to start getting into, because the robot project made me realize how lacking I am in it, is coding. And there's a lot of different sites out there. I think I've seen it. I think it's code.org, where it's basic beginnings, where just the up, down, and the different movements, and see how it comes into place. And another thing that it's sort of coding, but it's also not, is this is called a makey-makey. It's based off of an Arduino board, which is, I think, similar to that Raspberry Pi. But what it is I take this cable and I hook it up to something that is conductive, like a banana or Play-Doh, and all of a sudden I'm playing Tetris or Super Mario or a piano with it. And getting people to understand that concept of how to make a complete circuit and how something like this gets coded and cause and reaction is really interesting. Brush box was something really easy I did. It's a toothbrush, a battery, and a pager motor. And when you put them all together, they zoom around the table, and you can race them and learn how to make them go in different directions. It's basic, but it's a start. There's a couple resources there that I found, but there are hundreds and thousands of things out there that I've pulled from. But the best place to start is get excited. Go back, tell someone about it. Hope that they'll tell someone else. Just keep talking, and eventually get the right person.
Questions, comments? Yes.
I think a big part of like the whole maker movement is being able to create something yourself.
Yep.
You envision and to like solve a problem of your own or something. So do you guys offer like 3D modeling software where people can go in and create their own parts that they can print?
That's actually our next step. We're looking into kind of like open source design software that we're able to use that will be easy for the public to kind of get a grasp of in order to kind of learn how to make something themselves, but at the same time kind of have the power to make something that's not just like a square. So it's something that we're in the process of. We're kind of looking into different programs to use online. That's definitely a direction I want to go. I mean, Thingiverse has a lot of stuff online, obviously, but the ultimate goal is to be able to come in, have something in your head, make a 3D model of it, and then print it so you have idea to creation to production. Really, everything kind of in the same sphere. So that's something we're working on.
Yeah, the whole thing took off much faster than we anticipated, so we didn't get there yet.
Where do you buy the office supplies?
Some of it I got directly from Printerbot, but others I was able to get from Amazon.
Wow.
Roughly the same price. We've had a variety of colors. We have fuchsia and pink and lime green and blue and teal and yellow. We saw glow in the dark recently.
I want to look at
That's what we want next. Yes.
I've been wanting to do this since I went to Westport's first presentation at CLA like 2 years ago. And we have a library board that, when you say we want to do this, they're like, well, this is not a good use of access. So, I mean, and I said to them, you can, all these things that you've shown us today, but it's like, I can't seem to win over a couple. Do you have any I don't know what else to say to them, besides it pulls people into the community. I mean, we had a former page who has a printer who brought it in and did a demo. We
For your
filled
board?
the room, we packed the room, and we had people who hadn't been in the library before.
And they
So,
still.
and a lot of men. We get a lot of women who come in and use the library more than men, especially in programs. Just like with the team, we have more girls than boys. So it's like I'm really struggling with how do you convince people who do not use technology that this is important? That I feel like we're on the cusp of where we were in the late 80s with personal computers, where everything started getting these into their homes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get this across to them.
And they went to that presentation, and
One or two of them went, and they're like, "Yeah, well, that's a cool toy. It prints toys." That's what they said to me.
And it's so big and great at it.
Yeah.
Maybe they have trouble translating that. Can you just kind of fake it? Do it like.
We have Pfizer people who live in town. We have people who work at EV. We have a lot of people who have technology backgrounds in college education, and that's why I was so frustrated.
Yeah, I understand. They're on your board.
right.
Well, we do some of them,
I mean, obviously the.
Well, Pleasant Cuts, it's like, oh, we're going to money. I guess we should. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I didn't think about it. I didn't talk to them.
Okay.
Okay.
What I think boards forget and what the city forgets is that library is a support system to the public education. And we don't only serve the general public, we support the school system. And until we get that through their mind, through their heads, we're not gonna get ahead. You need to approach this by saying, we are a support system. The school is only open till 3 o'clock. We need to support these children till 9 o'clock when we are open. Therefore, we need to provide these services to them, because those individuals who don't have the funding to have these different things at home, we need to provide them in the library. So that's how I would approach it, because the stronger the partnership with the Board of Ed, the better funding you'll get too.
Can I make a suggestion to that point? As a managerial type, I'm trying to justify the purchase of a maker bot, or whatever the brand name is. And one of the things I run up against is trying to justify return on investment in terms of dollars and cents. I suspect that I've heard all the same arguments in favor of getting a device. I'm responsible for mail and duplicating, and so copiers and distributed fax machines and whatever for a college campus. And in working with the library, I've heard a suggestion that, well, this is a good draw. But I think what is missing in that discussion for a good draw is metrics. And I think if we could quantify that and say, well, this will draw 200 more people per day of this demographic into the library, which represents this kind of, I guess, tangible benefit, that measurable benefit. And you can put it in terms of metrics. I think that would make a stronger case for all of the people who want to hear, well, what are we getting for our money? And I think if you could say that you'll get this many more men into the library per day on this basis, or provide this much more exposure to this many more students, this many more children, and you have those metrics established from people like, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the library that you guys represent. If we have those metrics in place, then we could say, well, here's the precedent, and this is what they did. We can do that too.
What I can offer is we've had this up and going for 4 months, and I've already had over 10 outside groups come in, and that's not talking about one-on-one or the introductions that Chris has done to get people doing it on their own. I'm just talking about in terms of classes and after-school programs where I haven't even offered them. They've come to me. When we get around to publicizing, I'm afraid to, because I don't know. I didn't have the time.
I just want to get back to that we're exploring the value added. Everyone's driven, all of our organizations are driven by statistics, but some of those statistics are empty statistics. So we're looking at value added return on investment, that they're not only bringing a more diverse range of individuals into the library, but they're going out of the library for having learned usable skills and things like that. And also, you're very good at developing those community outreach relationships, which are so important for sustaining the library in this day and age, that we really have to go beyond the brick and mortar of the library and reach out to those communities, not just the schools, but the social services and other community agencies. So you're doing a wonderful job.
Well, and they are. Another thing, I don't know if it asks for support, but we're always saying we want to work better with school. Public libraries are always saying they want to work with schools more. The Dean of Students came to me and said, I want to talk about our summer enrichment programs and what you can be involved in. So I don't know how much we're going to do this year, because again, it was so close to summer when all this happened, but it's there, and that to me is reason enough. And I do go to the town council and the board and tell them these things. So I'm not sure.
She's a man.
Okay.
So I just wanted to ask that as far as supplies, like how did you decide what to have on hand when you started? Because it sounds like you probably needed way more than you had on hand. But when you're just starting out, did you just say, okay, how much use
This was kind of a trial and error process, because the first plastic we used didn't like printing. So there's multiple forms of plastic we use, but for the most part, as far as our experience, you've got an ABS plastic and a PLA. ABS is kind of like a petroleum-based plastic. It melts at a higher temperature, but it doesn't like sticking to the hotbed. So after we do a print job, you'd actually, if you remember the kind of like UFO-looking nickel calibration device, it would like fold up on the end, so it almost looked like a cool manta ray. That wasn't exactly what we were going for. And then the other plastic had success with is PLA. It's a corn-based plastic. It melts at a slightly lower temperature. Each plastic kind of has its own specific use that it's going to be better, better used for. And in our experience, the PLA plastic has really kind of held its shape better. As soon as it extrudes and hits the table, it stays hot enough to hold on to the next layer of plastic, but it's cold enough to hold its shape. And let's see, actually, if I can go back to the picture of our printer.
Do you have a heated bed on your
We do have a heated bed on the printer. And the heated bed is kept at 95 degrees Celsius. The plastic extrudes at 200 and, I think 215, 220 Celsius. So the heated bed is actually the blue part right there you can see. And that's just painter's tape. We ended up covering the top in painter's tape because we noticed and we were told that this specific type of plastic sticks better to painter's tape than it will. And the print bed itself is just a heated glass plate with the heaters underneath. So with the plastic on top, or the tape on top, we've actually been able to kind of create a surface that the plastic will absolutely adhere itself to. And then after the print job's done, like maybe 5 minutes, after it's solid enough, you can just kind of like pop it right off and move on to the next. And then after we figured out that plastic worked, we got an array of colors. So we've got, I think six or seven colors that we're running right now. I mean, that plastic will last us a decent while, but it at least gives us a way to kind of give users a modular experience. So they can say, I want this and I want it in this color. I want to try mixing these colors up. And it gives us a way to kind of try out a new way to use the machine itself, as well as making it relevant and useful to patrons that want to use it. Did that answer your question?
Sort of, yeah. The other thing, how did you say, like, this will be my basic, stuff?
I just kind of
trial
looked
and
around
error.
and see what was there.
And
We started with the 2 different presses, but then we went, I assume you're asking, like, why did we get a Makey Makey and a 3-doodler? And
no, just like the little pieces that you use. The pieces you have in the nice plastic drawers I could relate to.
That was in my basement.
Okay.
It was free.
But not the plastic drawers, just like what would you have on hand for people to
We have
start on?
a few screwdrivers, which we got for a lot of the tinkering, and then we started like the different projects people were talking to us about. A lot of people were talking about any kind of beginning wiring, so I said, okay, let's get a soldering iron. People were, again, they didn't know how to use screwdrivers, so I got wire strippers so they could learn how to do basic connections there. We're building it slowly, not a ton of tools at a time, but if we got projects, let's say, okay, we need 1 or 2 things, let's get them, and then we'll have them for the next project.
And as far as the printer is concerned, we have an Allen wrench to help adjust the table, because really the biggest thing that we've come to realize, and it's really the first thing I do every morning, is actually leveling the table. The table is on springs with 4 screws at either corner, so we're actually able to kind of calibrate the table so that it's not level to the table that it's sitting on. But right, so we calibrate on the X and the Y axis to make sure that it's level. Initially, I tried going using a bubble level. It probably has a more technical term, but the little bubble.
And have it on your phone.
Right, exactly. So that would have been never mind. Anyway, and then I decided that it was just easier to actually physically move the print head in each corner that I wanted to calibrate. And it was just 5 minutes, it's level, and we're good to go. So I mean, you can do a level if you want. We have an Allen wrench. We have a Phillips screwdriver, because that's the rest of the hardware that is used to kind of hold the printer together. And then we've got the painter's tape, which works. This is 3M. I think any painter's tape will probably work. And then we have a pair of tweezers in order to kind of pull plastic off of the head of the extruder. We have an extra extruder as well, because that, from our reading, was one of the parts that was the first to fail. And what is the one like that?
I think so.
Yeah, so, and the extruder is, I don't know if you can see, but it's this little, right there, the little red bit. Oh, there you go. Thank you. It's the red bit with kind of like the copper end on it, so that's what actually physically heats the plastic in order to extrude it onto the bed. And we've read that is the part that's kind of, it just because it heats up and cools down like so many times, that's the first part that kind of fails. So we have a second one on here. We haven't actually had any issues with it getting ready to fail yet, so that's good.
Just a suggestion is that this is so fabulous and gave us so much energy, and I think you should put it on YouTube, get CEN, put it on YouTube, and then get on the news, and then get, know how they always say, well, go to our website, you can donate, and you guys should profit from this because you've done really good service.
Thank you.
Are you charging?
We are doing 10 cents an ounce for the plastic as far as what's coming from the printer.
$1 an ounce for the
Oh,
plastic.
just kidding.
So if a wheel costs me about $30, it's got about 28 ounces on it, and just to make that easy, $1 an ounce, we have a little scale, whatever. A lot of things that we've been printing begin at first for these little robots, 17 cents. So people are finding it's really accessible to do that, and they can get a chance to play it for not very much. And really, to us, it's sort of like the photocopier. We're going to have a photocopier, but it's the ink and the toner that we're getting charged for. You had something?
Yeah, your initial cost and how much of your time a day, you say percentage or?
Well, the printer itself was $1,200-1,300, and then maybe another $100 in supplies just to get going.
You need a laptop, dedicated laptop for it?
Any computer.
Any computer?
Any computer.
And there's multiple ways. I mean, we have it so that we have a dedicated computer for it, but the printer also has an SD card slot. So really, you can use any computer in the library that has the design software or the object, pop it on an SD card if either the library could have those on hand or if the patron themselves has one. They can just plug that into the printer and then print from there.
Because you see that little screen on the side, you're supposed to be able to do all the things we do on the computer that way, but it's just much cleaner. And then in terms of time, Chris works 8 hours a week with a couple Saturdays here and there, and he didn't. I had a couple of really big projects with it, so that were above my skill level. Like I do not know how to make a report. I should not have done that as my first project, but it works, and that took some time. But in terms of just doing some basic things and sitting down with someone, in a 45-minute session, we can have someone printing on their own. We just ask that one of us is in the building so that if something were to not happen correctly, one of us could step in. They could come get us and one of us could step in. But for the most part, they could set up their prints, do their prints, and just babysit it, and then we're there for emergencies.
We're still kind of in a trial phase with that, so it's like if the kind of on a patron by patron basis, if we feel like they'll be comfortable using the printer so that they can kind of have minimal supervision versus somebody that might not be as comfortable with it, we'll take extra time to sit with them or kind of remain in the general vicinity so we can respond to an issue if something arises.
And that's part of why it's right on the other side of the glass window from my office. I know who's there.
And you schedule time.
Yep.
Yeah, they can just sign up, and if no one's scheduled, they can use it.
Time, take for example, the chess piece to replace. That was a cool idea. How much time would it take to print something like that?
20 minutes. I've seen some things. We printed a large octopus that was like this big, and that took over an hour, but most things were around 20 to 40 minutes.
This is about a half an hour for something like this. And the original version of this robot was actually only about as tall up until about its neckline. So, this was about a 28-minute print job here. So, really, as long as, the object is something simple like this or simple like a chess piece, the printer can really kind of bang it out really quickly.
20 minutes to print, but for the typical user, how long for them to actually design it and get it ready to go?
We're unsure on the design part yet because we haven't had experience with the actual design of the object. As far as putting an object into the printer, it's, however long they want to take to find something online through Thingiverse or if they have another open source platform to find an object.
And really, to calibrate to print, 2 minutes. It's a few buttons, and the hardest part is waiting for the printer to heat up because you have to do that first, and you have to do it in between, and that gets frustrating. But still, you're looking at under 10 minutes for heat. Yes.
So, is there a list of maker spaces in the area?
I don't know that I have one there. I can speak of a few libraries. I know Southington, I think Trumbull. Donna, maybe you know some more off the top of your head.
Darien has one.
New Canaan.
New Canaan has one.
Ridgeville, I think is one.
And I think you said you.
UConn.
Guilford has one as well.
Okay.
We're about the same, but we're trying to move just beyond Thingiverse. And what I wonder is, do you have a policy where if someone in your community is comfortable with 3D software and comes up and just drops off a CAD file, do you have like a printer queue where you can just run jobs for people in the community?
No, they have to come in and do it because That's the person here 8 hours a week. If we had someone like you or someone with that level of interest and skill with the printer, then maybe we consider it, but right now, that would be too much of a step.
I thought if you ever get one, of training the teams to do it, and then have people make appointments for fit with them, they can come in, kind of do it, or run the projects that people drop off.
And that's part of what we're hoping with this board that we're talking about, hoping that he has the passwords to the printer, or to the computer. He has everything. He comes in, he's like, can I use it? Yes. So we're hoping that once he does that, he can start doing that.
I mean, he's already completely comfortable with the printer. He's learned how to adjust. I mean, he's perfectly comfortable doing everything that I do with the printer for the most part. And it's for him to kind of take it to that next level, which he's already expressed interest in working with other members of the community, whether they're his friends or somebody his own age, or adults in the community or families that want to learn how to use it. So I mean, the interest is definitely there on his part, and I would